All right. And I will, while you do that, I know it can be a moment to get technology to work. I'll let you do that. Introduce yourself with your name, what brought you to this call, and any questions. And as you're introducing yourselves, I will introduce myself. So, as I said, I'm Rebecca, and I currently live and have been in New Orleans for about almost 6 years. I'm originally from California, so if there are any Californians in here, hello. And I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today because collaborative leadership has come up in so many contexts of my life, and I'm sure those of us on the call can relate that when collaboration is not working, it really has been uncomfortable and a bit overwhelming on how to figure out how to move forward with some of the teams I've been a part of. A lot of care has been wrapped up in the work that I've done. So when things aren't working, it is more than just a technical issue. And many of our leaders have a similar experience. So I'm energized to talk about some of those solutions and how to really practice humanizing and supported leadership during this call. So now I'll pass it off to Cecile.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad you could be here with us this morning. And I'm Cecile Green. I'm one of the co-founders of Round Sky Solutions and the primary instructor here. I live near Montpelier, Vermont, and I've been a social entrepreneur for over 30 years. And in that process, really encountered a lot of dysfunction with different kinds of collaboration or autocratic leadership. And it really inspired me to research deeply into what is power and how can we use it more effectively. And I published Collaboration That Works, a ruthlessly practical handbook for a generative world, as a training manual that summarizes the research I've done and into the common power dynamics at work, and offers a synthesis of over a dozen different collaborative methodologies into a set of practices for healthy shared power. And the most exciting thing for me about this call today is offering this new community space for exploring the collaborative leadership needs and goals for you all on the call here today. So with that, I'll pass it back to Rebecca.
Great. Welcome, and welcome everyone. Thanks for introducing yourselves. We have some folks from Vermont, Boston, Texas, I think, LA. Welcome. Thanks for introducing yourselves, and feel free to say hello to each other. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some time to ourselves, just a minute, to reflect on what has been an accomplishment from this past year, or something you're proud of, something that worked really well. And this could be a little hard for some people. I was in some conversation recently, and I want to push you to think about, this could be a skill that you have, it could be a moment, it could be anything. And then we're gonna share. So just take a moment, we'll give you a minute to reflect on, to brainstorm on what you are proud of from the last year or you feel good about. Or the last 2 years. It's okay if it's not exactly in that time frame. All right, so we'll come back together, and you should now be able to see a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard on your screen. And we're all going to enter our, so this is anonymous, we're all going to enter our accomplishment or something we're proud of in this whiteboard so we can see collectively what we have here. So to do that, if you want to scroll your cursor up you'll see a black toolbar, dark gray, and you'll see view options, and then you can click annotate underneath that. And so we'll put, so then you'll have like a little toolbar that will say text, draw. Text is probably easier, and I'll make a big one thing there. So this is our accomplishments whiteboard. So if you want to add anything in there, you click the whiteboard and you start typing, and then you click outside of that box and it will show up. We won't see you typing. So I'll add mine. I have to think of mine now. Okay, we have a few here. I just added ability to be authentic. That's something that I'm proud of, that I have a skill around, that some people have shared with me, and I feel that's true. And someone else said team building in our organization. That's great. Building trust and cohesion. I offered an introduction to clean language to a group in my town. Awesome. That's a great accomplishment, putting yourself out there and sharing knowledge. Workshops I've helped to create, introducing collab to new audiences. I think I know who that is. Thank you. And also putting yourself out there and sharing what you're passionate about is wonderful. Saying no to narcissists, probably more difficult than it sounds. Thanks for sharing that. Feel free to add more than one thing if you'd like as well here. Things that you're proud of, skills, moments. I'm sure there was more than this. I'll add another one here. All right. And we went in the same spot. Being compassionate when under attack, starting a master's program. The board successfully implemented good meeting practices, like keeping a stack and making an agenda without I needing to intervene. That's wonderful. Some leadership that's happening. Thank you for putting that in the chat box. I'll go ahead and put it on there so you're here. Oh, thank you, whoever put that on there. Allowing a department to have a voice in the work they do. That's wonderful. Great, well, thank you for sharing those, and I'll save this and I'll share it with you later. So we have that. And then I'll exit out of this. And then the next thing here that I'd love to do is take a few moments to talk about why collaborative leadership is so important to us. So I'm going to pass it back to Cecile.
Yeah, so as Rebecca was framing up for us just a little while ago, getting workable collaborative leadership for ourselves and our teams can be quite challenging. And our perspective is that as a species, we're emerging out of a very long history of autocratic leadership that forms the basis for how we think about power and leadership. And these ways of being run really, really deep. And in order to create new ways of leading, it really means we need to enter as a species entirely ourselves, but also just our teams and our organizations, a new territory, a terra incognito, an unknown or an unfamiliar territory, in order to be able to create these effective participatory patterns that we know and want and yearn for. And I like it when those of us interested in collaborative participatory ways, what we're doing is kind of like bushwhacking. We're entering this new territory. We don't really, fully understand how it works or what the topography is in it. And so we're entering this place of trying to self-organize, and we've come from a history that is so steeped in autocratic ways of working and relating to each other. And as a bushwhacker myself in real life, I've learned that when I go into a terra incognito, a new territory, it's really helpful to have a useful map, a good compass, and a means of traversing the terrain. That could be as simple as my boots, or it could be a more complex vehicle. depending upon your situation. But as we navigate participatory management, I found the same kind of tools really invaluable. I found that having a practical understanding of how power works and how it flows forms that useful map of the territory of organization. And then we're able to navigate that terrain through the vehicle of a set of communication practices guided by our compass of participatory values. And even so, you know, experiments into shared power can be fraught with both confusion and conflict, since everyone may have a different idea about what shared power should look like and what it should feel like. And it's really not as easy as simply claiming that we're collaborative, right? There's a lot of collaboration washing that I see out there that's really falling short of what's possible. There is a tremendous amount of knowledge and skill that really goes into making collaborative leadership effective and efficient, so that all of us can experience the real and tangible benefits of collaborative leadership rather than having those experiments backfired. So here are some of the tangible proven benefits of collaborative leadership. And yes, there is a mounting body of research out there that backs this up. So beginning with creativity and productivity, more satisfaction. And collaborative leadership really does this by fostering empowerment and investment. In addition, it reduces costs through distributing the work of management to all members in a self-organizing team, right? It also cultivates organizational responsiveness, because if there's something that is needed, everyone in the organization has been empowered to see what's needed and to do something about it. You don't have to just wait until your manager has come up with some good idea for how to deal with the situation. It also really encourages meaningful relationships, because we get to work with each other, doing an efficient and effective work together over time. And it builds conflict resolution capacity, because we're regularly practicing synthesizing our differing perspectives. It also develops the capacity to recognize and reduce bias in action by consistently and actively making room for all voices. So no longer are we simply sort of stuck saying, oh, I wish there was room for all the voices here. We really now have tools to do that, actually. And in the end, we get organizations that are more resilient. They're better able to navigate the complex business environments that all of us as leaders face. So with just a snapshot of why collaborative leadership matters, why it's important, we're going to give a chance for all of us to break out into small groups of 3 to surface your challenges with collaborative leadership together. So when you get into your breakouts, we'll ask you to first introduce yourselves and choose an order, what order you're going to go in. Each of you is going to have about 3 minutes to share your answers to these questions. What are the biggest challenges you've encountered with leading collaboratively? Or share a situation where you're not sure what the solution should have been, or just anything that's really weighing on your mind as a leader. And once you've all had a chance to share, all 3 of you, would like you to think about what themes have come up between you all. And we'll be coming back together to do another whiteboard activity to collect those themes and discuss sort of what's emerging for all of us. So we'll keep you posted on the timing in your breakouts by this thing that's called a broadcast function. It's going to pop up at the top of your screen, and it'll give you your instructions. It'll stay there for a little while, won't be there the whole time. So just take a note of what those instructions are. And now I just simply accept the breakout group request.
So you should have an invitation on your screen. And open your mic if you're having trouble figuring that out. I'm happy to help you.
Looks like we have 1 person still in the main room. Rebecca, is it possible to move them? Awesome. Yeah. Sweet. Oh. Okay, well, I'm going to start the timer.
Oh, I think that there's a duplicate there. That's why.
Ah, okay.
Oh, I should. Great. I'll be right back. There's someone needs help.
So we're coming up on our first 3 minutes. Did you get my message about the 3 minutes? Okay.
I did. I will broadcast that now.
Thank you. I'm going to start the second 3 minutes again now too then.
Great.
Are you hearing that little buzzing sound in the background? No?
No.
Okay. Must just be on my end.
Although my earring is bouncing, but maybe you can't hear that.
Actually, I don't know. It's not loud or noticeable.
It's loud, but
You mean your earring bouncing against the yeah.
the headphone, yeah. I think this is a rich question
Mm-hmm.
about which challenges. Because it's, I mean, I made the question, or one of us did, so it's great. But also because it's such an important thing to reflect on, because we're such in go, go, go mode, and we don't think about we don't allow ourselves to let something weigh on our mind. And if it does, it's frustrating often. So I think this is great.
Yeah, I know for myself that not having a specific forum or format to ask the reflective questions, they often, especially if it's around something difficult, they often get pushed aside, right? Because life is so full already, you know, why take time to you know, reflect on something challenging unless you have to.
Right.
Yeah. So these kinds of forums I think are really helpful.
Especially with someone outside of your organization, when maybe
Yep.
talking about it within would be risky or just uncomfortable.
Although I find that when, you know, we do our debriefs after our calls, you know, that can be a time to reflect on things that didn't go well. And I find that helpful.
True.
And I also find that just having a specific time when we're doing that is really useful. I'm not sure how much I would remember if we didn't actually make time for that, that question, that conversation.
Right. And it's pretty efficient to do it at a specific time to discuss things that are coming up.
Right.
Otherwise, it could derail a whole conversation. That's
very true.
else.
Yeah. So we are at our second 3 minutes.
Okay. So they should switch.
Have you sent that broadcast yet?
Yes.
There we go. All right.
And then they'll have some time to theme, right? To make connections.
Yeah. Just doing a
2
quick check.
minutes, right?
Yeah, at least. We're doing okay on the timing. So we'll give a full 3 minutes for this, and then why not another full 3 minutes? I think we have time for that.
Do you even want to give more time, actually?
Good question. If we ask them, will they be able to chat, that into the chat box? Do you know? No, they don't have access to the chat box and breakouts. Okay.
Yeah.
So how about you, actually, Rebecca? What would you say your challenges for the last year have been with your collaborative leadership? Moment?
I think partially trusting people to follow through, or trusting that people will. It's not like a micromanaging thing. It's more of trusting that people will communicate if they can't do something, and if they, like, because it's happened in so many different scenarios that people don't follow through. So I think it's kind of, by the end of the year, it's like, oh, I'll just not collaborate in that way. I have like areas that I will collaborate on, and then areas that I'm not willing to. So, and I think that's in some ways holding that back, those areas back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And are those challenges happening within a context where the expectations are really clear, where you have the roles and accountabilities and projects are spelled out, or are those vague?
I think they've become more vague over time.
Interesting.
They were clear, and then it's kind of chipped away because it wasn't working.
Okay.
So it needs to be revisited.
Yep. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, and then another area is around groups that don't want structure and feeling like it's hard to be present when which is awful, but I'm thinking about it's hard to be present when I'm like not sure where we are. And then I'm thinking like, well, we could be doing this way instead. And then I'm like, oh wait, what are we talking about? So that's not good.
So yeah, we're at our last 3 minutes is up.
Great. So you want 3 minutes to make connections and identify
themes. Yeah.
So can you let me know when 2 minutes of that is up, because it takes them a minute to come back?
Okay, good. Yes. Or we could just let them have that extra minute.
That's probably better.
Yeah.
And for those listening in on the recording, you have three-ish minutes to make connections and themes. How about for you? What do you think has been the biggest challenge with leading collaboratively this year?
Yeah, I think the one that really the moment that really stands out for me is a situation where the expectations had been made clear, but an individual chose to basically completely disregard them and do what they wanted to do anyways, which ended up actually causing harm to the team. And that sort of it was essentially use of autocratic power, right? They had that. They used their own autonomous power to go against what had been collectively made clear, to do what they wanted to do for their own benefit, right? It was a disregarding basically of what had been set forward. And, that's a really interesting question, like what to do when people aren't actually in a place where they are able to value the collective clarity and the parameters that have been spelled out, and they're more invested in their own benefit. And I think it comes back to questions of personal development. Are they interested in working on themselves in this way? And if not, I think that they're probably not a good fit for a team that really wants to be collaborative. That sort of ability to take the collective into account at least as much as your own needs is a really important baseline that either people have to want to work on that, or they have to have it already. And or there have to be severe enough consequences in place, right, that they are deterred from doing that. But then that gets down into this kind of punitive way of leading and managing, which sometimes is really necessary. But I think ideally you actually want to build that intrinsic motivation on people's part to actually really think about the impact this is going to have on my team, right? This isn't just about me. But that's, I think, a really tricky spot. And I think, potentially, that's one reason why having sort of periods of time when new people are coming on board that are trial periods, you get to see where someone's at with that particular way of being, are really important. And we are at 3 minutes again.
Yeah, I think the main thing needed for collaboration is that willingness not like we had said earlier, or I had said earlier, it's not personality, it's just willingness and working at it.
Yep. And I would add to that willingness, the willingness to grow, like, and to work on yourself, and to not just, sort of defend your position, which is, can be challenging for sure. It's not like being collaborative is necessarily easy all the time. Right. Yeah. Certainly can feel a whole lot better, but, than autocratic leadership across the board. But it takes work. We actually have to traverse that terrain.
Right.
We have to walk it and talk it. Well,
everyone's coming back. Welcome back. Great.
Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you can see this whiteboard again. Rebecca, will you get that up for us so that we can, we're gonna do another sort of opportunity for you to put on the board. What were some of the themes that came up for you, or what were the outliers? Like, what seemed really different, or questions that came up for you during this last breakout that you had. So go ahead, if those of you who are haven't had the instructions on getting into the whiteboard, remember you have to move your cursor up to the top of the screen, click the view options down arrow, and you should be able to annotate. It's down at the very bottom of that pop-up list, and then you have to click on text in the bar that pops up, and then you can type in on that whiteboard. So while you all are getting oriented, I'll just put one up here that's, oh, there's one. Nice. Let's see. Balancing day-to-day, putting out fires with long-term planning and creating good internal processes. Yeah, that's huge, especially if you have a team that's really, so the whole putting out fires thing is, it's sort of the output of having a team process, a collaborative team process that's not working very well. And so it tends to recreate itself over and over again. And people actually get addicted to this sense that, oh, there's a fire and the adrenaline's rushing, and, and we got to deal with this thing. And it's a whole dynamic, right? And sometimes it can be very hard to get out of. And so, I do recommend that, you set aside that time, especially I think the meeting process and places is a great time to create a little more structure for having these important conversations that aren't just about your fires. But probably the first load of issues you're going to have to deal with is, how do you stop having to put out fires? Because there's something sort of in the processes that you've got going that's generating that tendency to have fires. All right, there's a few lack of distributed accountability. That's a real common one. I've certainly encountered that in my leadership, and yeah, fortunately, there is a way of addressing that allows teams to really have clear and distributed accountability across it. But it does take some focus. And thank you, everyone. Lots of great themes coming up here. Discomfort with the storming phase of teamwork. Indeed, that is a really uncomfortable phase. Been through it myself a number of times. And certainly having clear opportunities to come together and continue to engage with that storm, as uncomfortable as it is really important, because otherwise that storming kind of blows people apart, depending upon your team.
Mm-hmm. And there's something that you say, Cecile, that you've said before, is that conflict is actually fuel, and that storming, there's a lot of energy in storming, and the energy can be used to fuel your organization or your team or whatever this entity is to the next phase, or it can just be a lot of chaos. Storms can be really harmful. So that storming phase can be really great and lead to great things, or it can fizzle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the critical thing there, as you were just saying, Rebecca, is that you've got to have a container for processing that conflict, and one that is reliably going to get you the fuel that's possible out of the conflict. Otherwise, it's not necessarily going to produce good results.
Mm-hmm.
But having reliable processes where you can take that and generate something useful for the team is
Mm-hmm.
it's really exciting. I
So
really see
that,
teams.
sorry.
No,
That
go
you
ahead.
don't, so that then if we don't have that, then we would just go back to the things that we've learned before, that those patterns that we already
That's right.
have, so that those hierarchical, those maybe the bad patterns that or harmful patterns that come up when conflict happens. Like you say something really harmful, or you just kind of take over everything. Like whatever happens in that, if you don't have a process to make sure you have something to go in during the storm, then it kind of just, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's very true. And it relates to another theme on the board here, the difficulty in effectively communicating and addressing interpersonal conflicts. You know, often it is those sort of heated, emotional, interpersonal looking conflicts that can be the most dicey for collaborative teams to understand how to move forward productively through that. And so, yeah, having a clear way of sort of sorting what's going on in the moment and identifying incremental improvement going forward, and having that container of a structure, really a clear process that allows our emotions to be there, but also gives them a good place to go is a huge relief.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all of these awesome themes. Let's see. Identifying the right people that align with the co-op's vision and mission. Absolutely, that's super critical. And it can be really challenging to be certain that the new people you're onboarding are really aligned. I was just talking with Rebecca during the breakout about the need to have these trial periods for people where you get to see what is their alignment beyond what they've said. I think that's a really critical phase to have when you're getting new team members on board.
Right. And that it's not, we came back to the personality thing, that it's not just about personality, but it's about, is this person willing to do what it takes to fit in your team in the way that you need them? Like maybe it's letting go of ego. If someone who can't say that they're wrong ever, is that going to work with cooperation? Like, are they just, that's not a personality thing. That's an unwillingness. That's a pattern that could be unlearned, right? So it's not like being like more outspoken. It's something that can be learned. So identifying the people that really align with how you want to act in the world is so important.
Yeah, super, super critical. Here's another one, inability, or is it lack of good process to see the opportunity, negatives, or complaints? And I would say that in my experience, the lack of good process is the first place to start if you've got an individual or team or a number of people who can't really, don't know how to take the conflict and turn it into fuel. My experience is that most of us just don't know how to do that, and that learning the tools for being able to do that, once you've got those in place, then you can see whether any individual is actually willing, as Rebecca was just saying, willing to actually go through the discomfort, willing to be wrong, willing to contribute. And if they're not, then they probably aren't a good fit for your team.
And I wonder if the inability to see opportunity and negatives or complaints is around burnout in some ways. Sometimes when people are so exhausted that they can't see the opportunity there. It's just another thing. And structure isn't the only solution, right? Like it has to be coupled, but if there is burnout, often there's a question about, well, why? Like what are we setting ourselves up for here? There's lots of external things too, of course, but how can we set ourselves up to be able to see opportunity in the inevitable negative things that happen? If you're doing good work, if you're doing risky work, things are going to come up. It just happens. Make mistakes. It's a good thing. Good thing to make mistakes.
It's one thing to say that. And then there's the moment when you have to actually deal with the mistake.
Right.
That's painful, but yeah, totally. Another one here, confusing business legal structure with desired governance structure. Why can't a for-profit company be governed collaboratively? Yeah, that confusion between legal structure and governance is super common. In fact, I'd say it's endemic to sort of mush those two things together. And partially there's good reason. Your legal documents, your bylaws, your operating agreements have to spell out to some extent how you're, you can have a board of directors, who's on the board, how do they get there? But often what I find is that those legal documents fall far short of really embedding collaboration in the organization as a day-to-day thing. So we actually have an addendum to our bylaws that spells that out. Yes, a for-profit company absolutely can be governed collaboratively. One of our biggest success stories is a Russian bank of 2,000 people that are, obviously for profit and definitely making big strides with this movement to be collaboratively run.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, worker cooperatives are for profit. Their main purpose isn't to create profit just for profit's sake, right? It's to serve the members. But it is a for-profit business. It's not technically a nonprofit in the same way of like charity, right? So, and that is based on cooperative governance, democratic.
Yeah.
So I would say yes.
Yeah.
And how, stay tuned.
Exactly. I just want to name, there's a couple other here, uneven sense of responsibility for results. Is this due to a lack of purpose? Could be, I would need to dig into that. We're going to have a Q&A in a few minutes, so feel free to bring any questions you still have up about this. And also autocratic leadership, disempowering other members of the team. That's a really common one-for-one. You get autocratic leadership, it's going to disempower people. So yes, unfortunate, but the key thing is, having the tools and the processes to turn that autocratic leadership into collaborative leadership. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been really rich. And we'll come back again to questions in a few minutes. But we'd like to take a little bit of time right now to turn our focus on this coming year, this 2019. We're at the beginning of this beautiful new year. And we want to give you a minute or two of some solo time to reflect on what do you want to work on in your collaborative leadership this year. It could be a goal you have, a particular growth area, a recurring issue you want to resolve in your work environment, whatever it is. But we're going to give you about a minute plus to think about where you think the biggest growth potential is for you with your leadership this year. And then we're going to share that together again. So we'll get the timer going and you can get your pens moving. About another 15, 20 seconds. Okay, so let's come back together again, and we're going to open up the mic so you have a chance to share what you're thinking about for your leadership goals or intentions for this year. So feel free to pipe up and share with us what you're thinking. You want to go, Jan? Go.
Yes, I do, because I'm going to have to leave just before 12. And
Okay.
I'm really eager to start implementing the collaborative leadership methods that I've learned in Collab in a very different arena. I've been applying them exclusively in nonprofit and voluntary teams, and I'm going to be shifting to for-profit and compensated teams, and it's going to be a wonderful challenge that I'm looking forward to. And my growth as a collaborative leader is my greatest opportunity.
Yeah, that's exciting, Jan. I'm so excited for you. Can't wait to hear. Anyone else would like to step forward and share your goals or intentions?
I'll go. So I have been studying communication for a couple of years, and it's important to me. And I'd like to be involved in some type of community where there's value being generated, and I'm kind of linking that value with, the service providers and the consumers of that. And it would be collaborative on each end of that, with the company and with the community.
Nice. That sounds like a worthy goal, Brian. A big one too. Yeah. Sweet. Well, we have time for one more person if you'd like to jump in and share your goals for this year.
I can share mine. I've been a long time person who values process in organizations, and I think I've been often alienated because of that around people who prioritize results and urgency. So one of my goals is to just trust myself in honoring the importance of intentional process for making and implementing decisions, and continuing to advocate for it within my team, even if I'm a minority.
Oh, sweet, Kathryn. Yes, we got your back. and it's a really common pattern. I want to say, yeah, it's common. It's very challenging, and I wish you the best. And yeah, it's a fantastic goal to have.
Yes. And I also saw your question earlier, so we'll make sure to circle back to that question, Kathryn, at the end. Although maybe it'll be a collaborative effort to figure out what the answer is to getting, to encouraging a team just to try it. So we'll come back to that. Thanks for sharing. So we have about 20 minutes left. We're going till 15 minutes after the hour. And I want to share with you an opportunity for you to consider to meet some of these goals, to think about how to solve some of the challenges that we talked about earlier. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to start with our webpage for the Collaborative Leadership Certification Program, Level 1. So let me do that, make sure I share the right one here. So, like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, one of our strategic initiatives for 2018 and now also for 2019 is this leadership program. And it really has been great to see the sustainable ways that it keeps supporting our students. It's been really a student that I just had an exit interview with. She said that I fulfilled my promise to her that it was life-changing. Although I don't remember saying life-changing, but it's really kind of wonderful to hear that. And so I want to just share a little bit about this with you all. So this is, you can see here on the screen up here, it says roundskysolutions.com/CLCP1. CLCP stands for Collaborative Leadership Certification Program. So I'll just call it CLCP now. And one is level 1. There's a couple levels, but the first one, it really focuses on you and how to implement this in your team. And so we'll take a few minutes to navigate this because it's kind of long. And you can always get to this page by going to apply today, by the way. So you'll see on the top, there's some details, just a quick picture details. You can click this to go down to the bottom, to the application. Here's some information about some of the benefits that our clients have shared with us and that we really hone in on. And some more information kind of about our philosophies and the way that we view the world. More about the benefits here. Some things that our past students have said about the program. There's a few here. There's not all of them, not the most recent students are not up here, but there's lots of really wonderful things. And it might give you a sense of who takes this training and if it might be right for you, some of the things they're saying. So definitely take a look. And if I scroll down, there's some more information about the details, about what's included and who's this for. So it's for people who are managers, directors, members of mission-driven teams, which could look like cooperatives, nonprofits, boards, businesses. It's also for coaches and cooperative consultants and developers. So people who do work with teams, they can also take this training. And then small business owners that are maybe doing succession planning from a hierarchical business, a traditional one, to a more collaborative one, maybe selling it to their employees, cooperative conversions, or leaders who are just seeking new tools to add to their resume and to continue on. So, and there's some important dates here. The applications are due January 24th. And this section is really the one I really wanted to show you. This section here with the plus sign, this shows you the 10 sessions. It's really long. All the information you'll need for the 10 weeks. So the curriculum, basically, the syllabus. So I opened it with that plus sign, and you'll see here the 10 sessions. I'll just scroll through. I'm not going to go through it one by one, but you can look at it there. So I'll keep going. 10 weeks. Here are some of the some things to see if you're wondering like how the flow is, how does this work, you can read that. Some information about the cost, which I'll go over in a minute. And then right at the bottom is the application. So at any time you can just press one of the buttons above and it'll bring you here. It's pretty simple. Probably will take you 15 minutes if you're quick, longer if you want to say a lot, and just submit there. And so there, if you have any questions at this point, feel free to type them in the chat box. So to continue, I like to think of this training as 2 tracks. One is personal development skills and one is leadership qualities. And the second part are personal skills and leadership qualities, and the second part is adding tangible tools to your leadership toolbox. So kind of soft and then more of a hard track, right? So they're going simultaneously to kind of support this change that's happening. And so I want to share 5 key learning and benefits from the program from the words of our students. So first of all, one of the things that come up over and over again is making real progress on your goals. So I'll go there, and this is a lot of words on the screen. I'll read some of them to you, but Erica just took the course. She's with the Maine Farmland Trust, and she said that this course has helped to renew my confidence in my own leadership abilities by providing me with practical tools that I can use to address some of the tensions I've been experiencing with my teams. So that inevitable conflict that comes up. And she says that she feels like she was able to see herself make incremental progress on her personal development topic, which is what you could think of that as a goal. And that has helped her feel more empowered to name and elevate tensions within her team and make collaborative plans to discuss them. So maybe that storming phase, how do you get through that? I think this is what she's talking about there. And that it just keeps coming up, right? Where conflict's inevitable. So the second thing that people say over and over again is that their meetings are just more productive and better because they have a process to hold them. And that is not the sexiest thing, although meetings really hold a lot of our work, right? So one person said that they came into this with this sense that during their meetings, some of their members would not express their opinions. Like they asked, what do people think? But people didn't really feel comfortable sharing their ideas. And this person really wanted to encourage them to be without hesitation, even if people didn't like it, right? That's the thing that we want. We want people to bring their full selves. So afterward, he said that by the end of the course, that having practiced facilitating in the sessions, it's a really hands-on course, that they really felt comfortable bringing the standard meeting practice, which is one of the tools that we offer, and sharing it with their team to make this the way that they're doing things. And he feels energized and like that there's an enlivened, renewed sense of purpose in helping change the world, which is a lot. And actually, I think I have this on a slide. I do. So that's really wonderful. To bring inclusion and appreciations within meetings is not something that I first thought of before Round Sky. I thought of something that was very boring and kind of chaotic and necessary, and also unnecessary at the same time. So over and over again, people say that their meetings are just better, and it's such a core place of communication. And the third thing, which is super important, is a strengthened collective decision-making process. So feel free to read this on the screen, but one thing that we really focus on in the course is the ability to facilitate decision-making in a collective with some core tools and also some core ways of being a leader. So you'll find that your ability has expanded to hone in on all the nuances of facilitating a team through that. And I felt like my listening skills got a lot better. And we practice it during the course, so you'll be able to work out some of the nitty-gritty details. So this person had said that knowing how to navigate conflict and work through arising tensions while honoring all voices is valid and vital to the process of a better outcome benefited everyone, which could be very challenging. And she said that being able to facilitate more effectively through these tensions and choosing not to see them as harmful to progress, but instrumental in movement forward as enhanced. So that is just really, really powerful, I think. And I'll share these slides with you so you can read these if you'd like afterward, if you're not getting every word. But the next one is really focusing on accountability. And this helps, we spend a lot of time thinking about this because this is where in collaborative teams, this can kind of disintegrate, especially when things get harder, that collaborative accountability. So we think about it for yourself and for your team. And our students often say that our training has been really effective in delving into easing some of the overwhelm that comes up and bringing more flow into that work, into their work with their team. So one of our students reflected that in a shared power setting, we don't always know who's going to hold the power for any particular decision. And we don't really want to talk about it because we're afraid of insulting each other. And she says that I find that facilitating meetings when shared power dynamics are at play to be particularly challenging, especially when I might be the person with the most authority. And when those leaders appear to me to be ineffective in their roles. I've definitely resonate with that sense. And so there's this, we're starting with this kind of fear of stepping on each other's toes. And then throughout the course, just super simple, one student put that the ops report, which is a tool we use, is a great tool. It helps us to track our tasks. In some cases, hold some of the members accountable for the tasks they had to complete. And this tool is super helpful to figure out how accountability and power within your team interact, and also to address those common challenges. People will drop the ball, and what do you do about that? You want to know how to fix that. And almost second to last, I have an extra one actually. So another thing is this, that your leadership your framing of it will definitely shift. It may be like a renewed sense of what you thought it was. It may be the words to how you've been feeling it, and it may be something totally new. So this person had said that it's been really liberating professionally to recognize that tensions are a natural part of teams, and that they really just stem from the human experience of being in community. And when I embrace tensions as food, I feel like a positive change agent rather than a leader who just lets someone down because they're unhappy or frustrated or challenged by an issue. And that is just really makes me a little speechless. I think that we're in such a conflict averse culture that when we can start to embrace that conflict, can be really powerful. So with that, one last thing I couldn't help myself was that one of the best parts about this training is that it's not cookie cutter molds, that you'll use these skills in all kinds of different contexts. It's not isolated, and you'll find that it's useful even in teams that aren't collaborative. You'll find yourself able to pinpoint things, or even in your relationships, potentially. It's been true for mine. And this person, one of our recent students that graduated this last month, said that the practical application of collab and working with others has been life-changing for me. Understanding the power matrix has changed my entire mindset as a parent, as a partner, as a leader, and as an organizer. So I just wanted to share those with you. And with that, I want to pass it to Cecile to talk a little bit about what's included in the program.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So as Rebecca mentioned, it's a 10-week session, happens online. And with that, you get the full collab instruction manual and card deck, which is a resource of all the practices that you can come back to over and over again, combined with examples and step-by-step instructions. You'll have video recordings of all the course content that you can refer back to, and our students do find themselves going back and watching our sessions to sort of get those nuances. You get that weekly live training call, and you'll get a chance to actually facilitate during the sessions and get feedback on your facilitation live. You have an opportunity to connect to a community of mission-driven leaders like you, and that sort of space that we build on the calls is really precious. People are often in tears at the end as we're saying our goodbyes to each other. You'll also get some very practical templates and training in how to build the responsive, dynamic, collaborative team that you want with individual authority and shared accountability. And you'll also have access to our online course platform where you can discuss your challenges, get feedback from the instructors and your peers. And at the end, you'll be certified as a collab level 1 facilitator that you can add to your resume and help that support your professional work. So you can go to that link, and yep, and that will take you to the place for more information and to apply.
Nice, thanks, Cecile. So just take a minute to talk about some of the details if you're considering this for yourself. So the cohorts meet online. It's a completely online program if that wasn't clear to you. And there are 4 to 7 people, and they run, like Cecile said, for 10 weeks. And we meet online on this Zoom platform for 2 hours a week. And outside of that, it's about 1 to 3 hours of work. And we can discuss that more if you'd like. And in between each session, you'll have the online course platform, like Cecile said. And some key dates are, the start week is February 18th. So if you do decide to do the program, we start in about a month. And then the applications are due in 2 weeks on February 24th. And the cost is $2,500, although we decided that anybody who went to this call gets a minimum of a $400 scholarship. So that's just a thank you for taking the time to be in community for the first part of this call. And also if your financial situation isn't as robust, then we're happy to do payment plans, and we may have more scholarship funding available as well. So please reach out to me. It's really important to us to make this accessible. And if you're in Vermont, you may qualify for the Vermont Student Aid Center. So the academic center, they might be able to give you a full scholarship depending on your situation. So, and we have other ways also, work trade and referral policies to make this as accessible as possible. So just make a note on your application if you want to talk about that. And with that, we went over all the details. So I just want to open it up to questions. And I wanted to circle back first to Kathryn's question around, she says, do you have any suggestions for how to present an opportunity such as this program to my colleagues so that they might consider making time for it? And the first part, Cecile, if you're not, if it's not front and center, she says she struggles with getting my team members to prioritize non-urgent tasks, such as this professional development, for streamlining how we work together and being more effective, joyful in our work.
Yeah, thanks, Kathryn. It can be challenging to get people to the table, so to speak. However, what I've found is that the time that you actually save by using these processes is usually readily apparent. So even at a first meeting, the traction that you gain, the efficiency that's possible, the number of issues you're able to move through usually speak for themselves. And so what I recommend folks try is to present this as an experiment. Let's just try this for X number of weeks, or even just one session. Let's check it out, see how it works, see how it feels. And that usually is sufficient to convince people to keep going. It obviously depends on the crowd and the personalities involved, but generally, just simply inviting that experiment is usually a good first step. The second thing I recommend is to figure out, what do you think the biggest pain points are for the team? And the way that collab works, there is almost always something that in the way that it takes folks through and offers these collaborative structures that will resolve that pain point for the team. And what those specific pain points are and how collab works to it, that we get into in the course in much more detail. And you have a chance to sort of bring forward the specifics of your issue, and we can kind of coach you through. And those are a few thoughts.
Could I ask just a follow-up question, Cecile?
Yeah, please.
As far as doing an experiment, are there particular tools, like I know that there's like a meeting process that you might recommend to use in an experiment?
Correct. Yep. It's a meeting process which includes a number of components, in a rapid collective decision-making process, also this accountability system that is very effective at getting people on board. And so those various components are sort of woven together into this one meeting process.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk with you more if there are certain, we could talk through a strategy, although what Cecile said around just getting people to agree to try can often be the best way. And any other, we probably have time for one question with Cecile, and I can stay on a little bit longer. What are some other questions? One more question for Cecile before she jumps off.
I don't want to jump the gun, but what's part 2?
Nice. Thanks, Brian. So part 2, in part 1, we cover the basics of the standard meeting practice, which really goes into depth on 2 of the 7 conversations that we see all organizations needing to have. So we go into 2 of those conversations. Level 2 gets into the other 5, and it comes back to those original 2 conversations, the operations and the governance conversations, in much greater detail. So that's what you get in level 2, is the opportunity to learn how to, for example, how do you do open book management? It's one thing to say, and it's a nice idea, but actually doing it is those are kinds of nuts and bolts that we get into in level 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As well as level 2 gets into the interpersonal conflict resolution process, which again we don't have time for in level 1.
Mm-hmm.
But that specific sort of how do you deal with those kinds of emotional conflicts.
So I saw on your website, which is really informative, and I really loved that. But you had a lot of areas of expertise that were pulled in. Two that stuck out for me were Center for Nonviolent Communication, and then another one on Theory U.
Yes. Yeah.
There might have been 10 of these interpersonal and collective think tanks and resources. How much of that material is pulled into level 1 and how much is pulled into level 2?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a complex answer, but CoLab has synthesized all of those methodologies into one simple set of learnable practices. And so we teach those learnable practices, but we don't go into the details of where that came from until actually later in level 2 and level 3. We get into the nuts and bolts of, well, what is Theory U exactly? So that's not front and center for level 1. From level 1, we're really focused on just learning this practice and then learning how to teach to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to know appreciative inquiry in and out or Theory U in order to do this. But it's, the benefits are still baked into what you're doing.
That's wonderful. That's amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like you've got wizardly powers. Yeah.
Well, thanks for your question, Brian. So I know I need to go, so you can jump off if you'd like, and I'll answer other questions that folks have. Thanks for being here, Cecile.
Yeah, thank you all. So great to meet you. Sorry I have to drop off, but enjoyed your time with Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question?
I have a question regarding the curriculum. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't cut anybody off. The schedule of how the curriculum is set up, is that set up in such a way that I could access it at any time during the week, or do I have to follow a certain schedule?
So good question. So we set up our schedule for 2 hours weekly. So there will be 2 hours where you will need to be on a session, basically. And those are scheduled via a platform called Doodle. So whoever decides to apply, they will put their schedule in there, what their timing is like, and then we'll pick a time that works for everyone. And so far, even across time zones, it's worked. So there will be 2 hours that you'll need to have blocked out. And we do let people, because life happens, we let people miss 2, although more than 2, you'll feel behind, and there's so much practice within the session that it wouldn't be helpful for you if you had to miss more than 2.
So is that addition to the 1 to 3 hours of coursework? Yes.
So, and you want me to say a little bit more about that, about why it's such a big range, possibly?
Sure.
So the kind of homework that you'll have, it may even overlap with what you're doing the course for. So I'm not sure what your situation is around like what kind of organization you're working with, but so most of the homework is about implementing the ideas that you have, practicing the standard meeting practice, practicing the collective decision-making practice. And so those might already happen in the work that you're doing. And then there are other things, some lecture videos so that you have more time for implementation and questions inside the courses. You'll have between a 15-minute video and the longest video is maybe an hour. But most of them are around 30, 40 minutes as homework. So there's not a lot of reading. There's some optional reading you could do if you're curious about diving in deeper. But the videos were between 15 and 50 minutes an hour.
I see. So when I'm implementing it, it's really reporting back on like my feedback on what it was like implementing it.
Right, and questions that came out of it. So maybe you try something, or you start to map out the roles in your organization, and then you run into something complex. You're like, what do I do with that? Or maybe there's a conversation that happened in your meeting and you didn't know like what to do with that. Like your team wasn't sure where to go with it. So those kinds of questions come up during the lecture sessions. They're not just lecture, they're kind of the asking questions about how your implementation is going. It's very hands-on.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, upon completion of the certification, you said that I could go and teach and facilitate at other places. Is that right?
So so the level 1 gives you kind of the tools and understanding in order to facilitate it within your team. And also get your questions answered during that, right? Because you don't, so then level 2 helps you to understand the fuller picture. And people who want to commercially sell this, so coaches and consultants, we ask that they have a supervision agreement with us until they're done with level 3, which is the supervision. So you could start practicing this with, remind me which organization you're with?
So I represent a couple organizations. My parent company is Irving Consulting Group, so that's my company. And then I also own a remodeling company called Homes ICG.
Okay.
So the ICG is Irving Consulting Group. So it's just a residential division of that company.
Okay.
But I also facilitate at the Co-op Academy in Worcester as well.
Cool. Great. So there's kind of like, it's an interesting way to think about this. So you're going to have tools that you can start, that you'll know the full picture of immediately. And so you can start using those, or skills that you can share through your work. And then there's also there's another section that is a bigger picture. So you couldn't really teach about the seven conversations that we have, right? If you don't know the full picture. We really want people to not sell this if they don't know the full picture yet, because then people, once they get a roadblock, people are really kind of like throw their hands up in the air if they don't know how to do something. So not you, but the clients you'd work with. If they think it doesn't work, then it'll really turn them off. So we ask that our students do their best to be honest about what they know with their client, and continue to get training with us as it's working for them. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of a blurry line because we know that you need to be able to use use the things immediately that you're learning. And we also don't want people to get turned off or not to feel supported. So that's where that comes from.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Any other questions that folks have on the call? Yeah.
My question is, what do you recommend? Because we have a big team, and I know we could facilitate, like if we do the training, we could facilitate and implement in our team, but you can recommend that in order for that the team, like more than one member take it in the team, or would just one person be okay? What do you recommend?
Good question. So you can do it one person in the team. Many people do that, similar to what someone had mentioned earlier. How do I get my team to do this? A lot of people have that experience. So one person doing it, you'll get a lot out of it, and you'll know enough to implement it in your team. It can be easier, especially if people on your team, if they're not doing it because they don't really think it will work or they don't want to, not about time or about anything else, then it might be harder, and it's nicer to have someone on your side, or someone that you can kind of work together to implement and use each other's knowledge and figure it out together. So it can be helpful to have more than one person, although it's not necessary. It may be faster to implement it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And my email is rebecca@roundskysolutions.com if any other questions come up for you. And I'm happy to have a one-on-one with anybody who wants to kind of talk through things more or just alone. That's fine too. So I appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.